It's a beautiful dream. Stopping the wheel.
I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break the wheel.
Hello, it's Lady B here with a breakdown of the second episode of Amazon Prime's Wheel of Time. I'm glad to report there's no threesomes, drinking sewage, or talk of double penetration in this episode, so we're already off to a better start, but not by much. We begin the episode with Rand in blood-spattered clothing surrounded by his dead friends back in the Two Rivers. This has to be a dream because the only time Rand has successfully used his sword was to yeet himself in a vision back in episode 8, and we soon find out that this is indeed a dream, and he's shacked up with an innkeeper named Celine, who is in fact Lanfear, something that Amazon spoiled in their own promotional materials. Rand is sleeping with her to pay the rent because this is another turning of the wheel, and as a stupid man, he can't take care of himself. I don't know about you, but I certainly didn't have Rent Boy Rand on my Season 2 bingo card. On his way to work, Rand gives a kid a coin, which is ad-libbed by the actor, showing that there are in fact some people who understand what to do to make characters likable, though it's too little too late. He's in Carrion, which actually looks like a real place and not an elaborately constructed foam set, and to the show's credit includes such details as broken towers. But that's pretty much the only book-accurate thing we'll get this time around. He stops to show his work permit to a dude who inexplicably looks like an elf. Rand works at a mental hospital where he takes care of a veteran of the Aiel Wars named Errol, who freaks out when he sees Rand because having an Aielman taking care of the unstable veteran makes a ton of sense. And you heard it here first, while he bears an uncanny resemblance in backstory and experience to Tam al'Thor,
that motherfucker back there is not real!
Also, this might be the first time that we hear about Rand's Aiel background, but better late than never. Errol tells Rand how Aiel women are fiercer than the men, preparing us for the imminent arrival of girl boss Aviendha. Rand then confronts another orderly bullying Errol in a series of low-key breathy whispers. Since Lan is an incompetent nincompoop too busy simping for Moiraine to teach Rand self-defense, Errol kindly picks up the slack and shows Rand how to use a sword that's really just a cane, so here's hoping that he can stick someone other than himself with the pointy end, eventually. Together they come up with a plan to beat the bully up, but don't worry, this is yet another fake out. I should point out that I didn't structure my review in the order that the events occurred, as this episode was a mishmash of short scenes. Very little happens in these scenes, which makes the episode seem to lack movement but also feel rushed because we expect, well, something to happen, but nothing really does. This show has a problem with pacing, and this episode seems especially problematic as it has a runtime of over 60 minutes, but I digress. Perrin and company are making their way through the country with bloody Uno Nomesta dropping in-world cursing every 2 seconds, which sounds about as lame as your grandpa who says heck trying to hang with the cool kids who drop F-bombs every 2 seconds. Elias somehow is able to track Pat and Fane to a house across the river that the gang crosses without getting wet. As we saw on the last episode, Perrin's powers let him see into the past, and he walks into the building and sees the family being slaughtered by a Fae days before they got there. They find said Fae killed and nailed to the door outside. In the book, this is a chilling scene as Fades have wreaked some serious havoc with the boys and seemingly killed Tom Merrilin, but after Moiraine dispatched one with a butter knife and Lan killed two with flippy kicks, they just don't seem that scary anymore. You know it takes a lot of work to actively lower the stakes, and it's a damn shame that this is what we get instead of Rand's awesome flicker scene. Meanwhile, back in the tower, Liandrin takes Nynaeve to see a girl suffering from breakbone fever and has her watch as an accepted heals her with the one power. Now maybe malpractice isn't a thing in this turning of the wheel, but in the books, healing is reserved for actual Aes Sedai. You know, doctors, not students. Perhaps if Nynaeve spent more time getting over her newly acquired block and less time fighting warders, she'd figure out how to heal too. Nevertheless, Liandrin talks Nynaeve into taking her accepted test even though she can hardly channel, so she can train her. Why she wants to do this, we don't know. Liandrin then visits Meth Cawthon, and this is a good place to point out that so far, Liandrin has had more screen time, lines, and story than any other character at this point. She tells him that they're holding him there to make sure the effects of the Shatter Logoth dagger have passed, which is a direct contradiction of Moiraine's insistence that Meth is evil, not the dagger. As I said in my last review, continuity is not their strong point, though I'm sure someone will claim she's just lying because she's Black Aja. The scene ends with Meth beginning to tunnel out as soon as Liandrin leaves. I would like to point out that Donald Finn does a good job here committing to his performance despite the awful writing and costuming. Credit where credit is due. Alas, one not awful performance is not enough to save us from the introduction of Elaine. In the books, she's an entitled brat with moments of insight and practicality, but she's even more insufferable here, like Hermione Granger on Adderall. She mistakes Egwene for a servant and is dumb enough to think that her room is full of rubbish, yet somehow smart enough to accurately identify the weave of her blanket. She happily informs Egwene that she's a daughter heir and her subject with all the sincerity of a wealthy white liberal communist lecturing us about privilege while pretending to slum it with the poorest. Sheriam, Alana, and her warders dump some exposition about Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine's power levels and throw in a mention of Logain and Mazrim Taim. They talk about the proximity of the last battle, but if I remember the season 1 finale correctly, that's already been fought and they still think Ishamael is a Dark One. Alana decides to go and help Moraine despite being one of the Aes Sedai who happily saw her exiled in episode 6 of season 1.
Bye, Felicia.
Again, continuity is not their strong suit. Perrin and company reach a small village and head for an inn, but Elias refuses to sleep inside and tells him that the Shienarans aren't his people. Seeing as we haven't got an explanation of who Elias is, I'm rather curious as to whom he thinks are Perrin's people.
These are my wolves.
Earlier in the episode, we found out that Lan and Moraine's plot armor did indeed save their lives, and they head out to the White Tower with Verin and Adelius. We almost got the scene from the Great Hunt where Verin figures out that Rand is a dragon, but instead of Moraine and Siuan grabbing the One Power and getting ready to put a cap in her ass, Moraine grabs her knife and Verin tells her that it was all a test to see if she was loyal to the dragon. Apparently the dragon can't break the world because it's already broken and needs to be fixed now, and Verin drops some poorly disguised hints that she's not on Team Light. She then drops some book lore that we most certainly won't see in the show, as Show Randall Simp is incapable of pulling a Chad move and fighting Ishamael in the sky over Falme. More shots of women talking, but at least we're outside and not in a hallway. Meanwhile, back in Carrion, Rand does his best Blue Steel impression.
The man has only one look, for Christ's sake!
As he searches for the bully from the mental hospital. Remembering nothing Errol told him, he pushes him down, accidentally channels, and probably kills the guy. Rand returns to Lanfear's Roach Motel, and she can smell the power on him and wants to get it on.
Makes them wet as October.
He says no, she says yes. I'm sure if this was the other way around, the feminist fans of the show would throw a fit, but we all know women can't be rapists, so Lanfear's off the hook this time. Back at the tower, Elaine pretends she doesn't know her way around so she can get to know Egwene. Sheriam rightly calls her out on her non-regulation room decor and demands to know who helped her set it up, but Elaine refuses to give the woman's name in a move that's supposed to seem brave, but is just a predictable mess of her own making. This seems especially stupid as we learn later that she's been at the White Tower for several summers. She takes the L on this one, but that doesn't stop her from dropping the fact that her mother's the queen. And man, it's bad when Show Elaine makes book Elaine look good. Nynaeve paints with the colors of the wind again and finds a hidden passage that Liandrin uses to sneak out of the tower. She follows her outside and discovers that the man Liandrin is seeing in North Harbor is actually her elderly dying son. I should point out that the phrase visiting North Harbor is used in the books as slang for sex, so I don't know what they're implying here or why Liandrin needs a son or a sympathetic backstory. She's an arrogant, evil, self-centered character who certainly doesn't merit a redemption arc or even this much screen time, but at least she snaps at Nynaeve, who didn't deserve it here but definitely deserves it for abandoning the injured on Winter's Night and trying to kill Lan in season 1. Back at the campground, we get some more warder sex stories and get to see Tomas and Lan die inside. Honestly, it seems like a lack of self-respect and dignity is a prerequisite to being a warder. Moraine recalls the story of how she met Lan from New Spring, while the burning feeling at the back of my throat intensified when Verin and Adelius take delight in explaining what a carniera is, and for a tiny moment, some life returns to Lan's eyes when he describes throwing Moraine in the pond. Now, if only he'd held her there. Meth Cawthon continues his prison break, actually making it through the walls this time to discover that Min is his next door neighbor. Now that a woman is involved, the prison break begins in earnest and is somehow over in a single night when Min removes most of the blocks between them. She's been captured by the Reds, but is somehow also still tending bar and shares some of her wine with word from Meth. Before she leaves, she has the visions of Meth, stabbing Rand with the Shadow Logoth dagger, suggesting that Varen's prophecies are wrong and we won't get Rand's fight with Ishamael at Falme, and Meth will stab Rand because he's evil, as Mairead said in Season 1, or some other half-baked idea that I guarantee will be worse than anything we could possibly think of. Back at the Roach Motel, Selene and Rand make it clear to each other that they're both pining for their exes. Book readers know she's secretly obsessed with Rand because he's Lews Therin Reborn, but this is not a thing in the show, so the whole scene comes off as lame CW-level drama, the kind of Tinder-inspired, no-strings-attached, casual sex intended for a modern audience. She tells Rand that if he helps her remember, she'll help him forget, and man, I can't forget this cringy dumpster fire scene fast enough. Despite having told us several times she's a daughter heir and her mom is the queen, Elaine can't get anyone to smuggle in alcohol into the White Tower for her, so she makes prison wine and shares it with Egwene. Elaine's there to interrogate her about Nynaeve under the guise of friendship, and the writers turn up the teen drama to 11. Egwene is jealous of all the attention Nynaeve is getting, and of course Nynaeve hears their conversation from the hall. Elaine calls out Egwene for being jealous, but this is ridiculous coming from a spoiled brat who, yet again, reminds Egwene she's a daughter heir. What's even more stupid is that they're both clearly jealous of Nynaeve. Why can't they just act like they do in the books and gossip about men like normal women? Nynaeve runs away to her room and Liandrin comes to take her to her accepted test despite knowing she's not ready, and she seems to feel some remorse. Again, what is her motivation here? Either she's evil and wants Nynaeve to get hurt or die, or she really just wants to help train her. Pick a lane! Nynaeve faces the arches, which ought to look like some high technology from a lost age, but instead are broken and dirty like some abandoned McDonald's in the hood. Back on the road, Lan steals Moiraine's poem and they argue. It's a kind of stereotypical scene where one character makes up some bullshit to push the other one away, but aside from the CW drama, we learn for the first time that in episode 8, Rand was fighting. Well, not really fighting, it was more like standing there like a character in a cutscene from a video game while the other characters moved around him. Anyway, his cutscene was not with the Dark One, but Ishamael, one of the Forsaken. How she's figured this out, we don't know. She bitches at Lan because she's mad at herself and declares that her loyalty lies with Rand, who, spoiler alert, is alive. This ploy is so stupid that even Lan can see through it, and in the ultimate betrayal, Moiraine brings in Alanna to take over his bond if he won't leave her willingly. Seeing how she's been cut off from the one power for quite some time and Lan has suffered no ill effects, I don't know why it's necessary to transfer the bond or even how Moiraine set this up with Alanna, seeing as she never communicated with her. But Moiraine rides off into the night, and I almost wish Lan would have gone nuts just to get some action for once. 56 minutes into this episode, and something finally happens. Back at the fishing village, the Seanchan arrive in the night and pull Perrin out of bed. I don't know why the Shienarans didn't have a watch going. It's not like they live on the borderlands and fight Trollocs 24/7 or anything, nor do I understand how someone built like a linebacker manages to be dragged around by 2 Pee Wee League soldiers. Masema puts on an impressive show, Ingtar and Uno have a buddy cop moment, and Perrin manages to free himself and walks around with his mouth open. Loyal hulks out and gets a somewhat book-accurate fight. There was a part in the books where he throws a Trolloc, so this isn't out of character, but his animalistic braying and growling is absolutely comical and ruins the mood. Masema comes back as an absolute Chad, and I honestly don't know why this guy wasn't cast as Lan. Perrin wakes up, grabs a bat, and goes Negan on the Seanchan. They form a line like this is a stupid anime fight, just in time for the Domine and Soldam to blow them away with a weave of air. Can we take a minute to talk about how absolutely ridiculous the Domine look? In the books, the Domine wear a collar attached to their Soldom's bracelet with a leash. Apparently this was too kinky for the showrunners, who decided a pacifier was better. When I saw this, I said this was some stupid symbol of silencing female voices, and
Fuck you, I was right! Fuck you, I was right! Fuck you, I was right!
According to costume designer Sharon Gilham, quote, I added the gold mouth stopper or dummy pacifier to symbolize their further silencing as individuals. Yeah, looking forward to Seanchan pussy hats in the future. The next morning, Perrin gets dragged in front of the Seanchan, who come riding into town on the Wish.com version of Xerxes' throne from 300. Ishamael is there with them for some reason and immediately recognizes Perrin. Seeing as he knows Perrin is one of the 3 boys he's been chasing, I have absolutely no idea why he doesn't just kill him now, but I've stopped trying to make sense of the show. Back in Carrion, Rand gets a promotion and unlocks access to the Logain Garden level after beating up the bully caregiver. When we see him beating this dude up, We're led to believe he's doing this because this dude is an asshole, but the scene makes it clear that Rand was simply looking to gain access to Logain, which makes Rand definitely look like the asshole here. Now, show Rand has so little brains and initiative that I'm calling it now. This was all Lanfear's idea. Anyway, we discover that despite Siuan declaring that Logain will live out his days being studied by Aes Sedai in the White Tower, he's been living in the asylum in Carrion, and somehow Rand knows who he is and thinks they have a lot in common. Thank the light! This is it for this episode, which clocks in at 62 minutes and really ought to have ended on the high note of the Shan Chen attack, but I never said these people were competent filmmakers. I hope you enjoyed this review. Please smash that like button like Lanfear smashes Rand, drop a comment, share this with your friends like Alana shares her warders, and I will see you for episode 3, Walk in the Light.